Welcome to Ground School USA's session on ATC and Radio Communications. I'm Derek Metro. I'm excited to share this lesson with you because one of the things I hear often from student pilots is how they feel less than confident when it comes to the radio and communicating with other pilots in air traffic control. Hey, that's totally understandable, so we're going to help that in this session. Nobody likes to sound like they're beginners, and it can be kind of intimidating talking with these professional air traffic controllers who, in between talking to you, are talking to heavy Boeing aircraft that are landing at some major terminal airport nearby. Most student pilots feel a little less certain about themselves when their hand reaches up for that microphone button. So we're going to help all that with this session, and you're going to grow your skills and your confidence and your comfortability talking on the radios. Whether you're a student pilot just starting out, or a seasoned pilot, or one that it's been a little while since you've been in an airplane. So without any further ado, let's get started. So first I want to look at the air traffic control system. Who are all the people that you talk to? Because sometimes that alone is just confusing. I think we have talked about it in this course. If you've taken the entire private pilot ground school course from Ground School USA, we've talked a little bit about the control tower and different types of airports and airspaces that have control towers. There are 3 primary airspaces that have a control tower. Do you guys remember that if you took those courses? One was class Bravo, another one was class Charlie, and the other was class D or Delta. Okay, those all share a control tower. Now, control towers come in, of course, different sizes and shapes and flavors, I guess so as to say. In other words, you're looking at a picture here of a pretty large control tower. There's a lot of people and personnel, and there can be that on one scale of the spectrum, and on the other side, a very small control tower, like in a class Delta, for example, the smallest of the tower-controlled airspaces, where there might just be 2 controllers in the control tower. Now, different positions that you have for sure at any control tower. One would be the ground controller. Okay, now the ground control individual controls the movement about the taxiways and the ramp areas, all the movement areas on the airport. Sometimes there's considered non-movement areas. And if you ever heard that phrase before, that just means that those are areas which you are free to move your aircraft without technically having to get permission from air traffic control, from ground control. Okay, well, let's move along to another controller that you would find, and that is TRACON. Now, TRACON stands for Terminal Radar Approach Control. Terminal Radar Approach Control. You might know it better as approach or approach control. We just kind of take that one word out of the TRACON and say approach a lot of times. Now, the TRACON is set up for specifically Class B and C regions. Okay, so that will help resolve a lot of confusion, because if you've heard about the approach controller, you might have wondered, where are they? Are they in all airports? Are they at all major terminal airports? They're going to be established in B and C, Class B and C environments, as well as TERSAs. And their main function and purpose in life is to separate and sequence arriving and departing IFR traffic. Okay, so VFR traffic, they can help you on a workload permitting basis, quote unquote, but their main priority is getting IFR inbound and outbound aircraft to and from those major terminal areas. Okay, so they're called Terminal Radar Approach Control. The phonetic alphabet. You do need to memorize the phonetic alphabet. That's Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Golf, and so on and so forth. You can't make up your own, or you shouldn't. Okay, so when it comes to H, you don't want to say Henry, or D for David. Okay, D is Delta in aviation. So you do need to memorize this. So the idea behind it is that whenever you're saying a letter over the radio, it could be easily misunderstood or confused. And so, for example, if you said B, did you say B or P or D or E or G? To be clear, we want to use the phonetic alphabet. So anytime you have to say B, you're going to say Bravo. And so it's just a memorization game is all it is, and you got to have some fun with that. All right, I remember the first time I went, actually really the first time I think I went flying in a small plane. I was only like a 15-year-old teenager, and somebody I knew had a small plane, a two-seater, and he said, "Man, come on with me. We're gonna have a great time. Let me take you up flying." I said, "Sure, that sounds great." I couldn't believe it. I was into remote control airplanes, so I thought this would be a real hoot. So we get up there, and we're coming back in, and I'll never forget. He said something to the tower about hotel and whiskey, and I just thought, man, what's going on? This guy's going to the hotel, and he's going to drink some whiskey when this thing is over. Phonetic alphabet. Make sure you memorize that. Numbers are all said separately. So for example, if I was going to say the number 10, I would say 10, 10. A lot of times you'll hear on the weather broadcast visibility 10, and beginners will hear that and say, it sounded like the visibility is 0. That's what I heard. 10, 10. Or if it's 100, it's 100. Now let's get into some basics of communications. Here's a basic outline of how you should talk when you're on the radios. Really, I call it the 3 W's. The 3 W's. Who you are, where you are, and what you want to do. Okay, or what you're going to do. Depends where you're at. If you're at a tower-controlled airport, what you want to do. If you're at a non-towered airport, what you're going to do. Okay, so there's a little subtlety there. But who, where, and what. And every time I talk on the radios, I follow this format. Here's an example. Let's say this is a non-towered airport. It might sound something kind of like this. Let's say you're at Henry Airport. I just made that up for fun. All right. Henry traffic. Cessna 525 Whiskey Alpha. There's that whiskey again. 10 miles northwest, inbound for landing, runway 5. Okay. So the who is Henry traffic. Cessna 525 Whiskey Alpha. Let's look at that first. All right, let's look at some basic towered airport communications, things that we would say. So for example, let's go back to taxiing for takeoff. This time I'm going to be contacting ground control once I got the weather. And I'd say something like, we'll just call it Henry again. I don't know where I got that, but Henry ground, Cessna 525 Whiskey Alpha, southeast tie downs, ready for taxi with information Bravo. Okay, now a couple things. Bravo, it's as we said earlier, a recorded message hourly about the weather situation at that particular airport, the runways in use, and they give you an alphabetic designation for each of those. So every time it's updated hourly or even non-hourly, if something's changing that's significant regarding the weather, it'll be changed and it will go to the next letter in the alphabet. So the next one would be Charlie. So first, what we're going to be doing is the pilots are going to be contacting clearance delivery to get their IFR clearance. Okay, so they got their little script of what they're to do, and where they go, and what altitude and frequencies they'll need for the trip. Then they're going to contact ground control to get permission to taxi. Then they're going to contact the control tower, or the tower controller, the local controller, for permission to take off. And just about as soon as their wheels are up, they're going to be transferred over to TRACON. Okay, you see that down here. So after we leave the airport area environment, we're going to be talking to TRACON, or approach control. In this case, they might address them as departure control. And they're going to get them safely sequenced and spaced out of the busy terminal area and get them up to their cruising altitudes. At that point, when they're outside of TRACON's domain, they're going to get switched over to center, ARTCC. Some other things that you might hear is you have traffic 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock. What does that mean? They're talking about the direction from the nose of your airplane, essentially, in terms of like a clock. Okay, so 12 o'clock would be straight ahead of your nose. All right, 6 o'clock would be on your tail. Right? 3 o'clock would be on your right wing, and 9 o'clock would be on your left wing. So any one of the clock directions is a way that you can look for traffic. So that's a way they'll acknowledge it. And they'll usually also give you the altitude of the other aircraft, especially if they have a transponder, the direction of flight, and maybe the type aircraft if they know what it is, if they're talking to that airplane. Now, what if the stuff fails? What if your radios quit? What do you do?